So today's theme is collaboration. And I should ask first before I begin, how many people in the room here know 53 or our iPad application called Paper? Just a show of hands. Holy, wow, okay, that's a good percentage of the room. For those who haven't seen it, I'll be using it to actually present my talk this morning. And you can loosely think of it as an application in which you can sketch, write, capture your ideas. You can organize your thoughts in these journals. And 53, the name of our company, actually refers to the length of the average arm's reach. That's 53 centimeters. That's the space between head, heart, and blank canvas. It's where people have their best ideas, right? It's the shortest distance from idea to action. So that really represents what we care about as a company. We very much care about the ability to create. We think everyone is creative. We think the one pervasive need that every human has is the need to create, and we want to build the best tools that fit into that arm's reach. I'll start with my story and my history with collaboration. And as Tina mentioned, I grew up in Germany, and America is pretty darn popular in Germany. Like, as is pop music and pop culture. Still am a huge fan of Miles Davis, and in particular his album Kind of Blue. If you've heard it, I mean, it's an incredible album because it was pretty much taken in one shot. And jazz itself really represents this idea of collaboration. It's people coming together on a stage, feeding off of each other. And then when you listen to even pop culture today, like in hip hop, people will say things like, are you feeling me? Can you pick up the beats that I'm dropping down? I mean, in American language, the American language is so full of these references of collaboration. Even the word collaboration sounds great in English. And recently, like when you look at what's going on in the fashion world, right, who's not collaborating with anyone else, right? So the melting pot of nations really is the home of collaboration. Now, meanwhile, growing up as a child in Germany, it was a little bit different, right? So here I am pressed up against like the toy store of collaboration, trying to get in. But in Germany, the word collaboration is Kollaboration. Yeah? And if someone comes to you and says, ich möchte mit dir kollaborieren, it doesn't just sound indecent, it is indecent. It took a very different route. It took a very different route in Germany. So, the French and the Germans were at war for many, many, many years. And so the Germans appropriated the word collaboration to denote the fact that, this is someone who's working in cahoots with the enemy, right? Very, very different tone, right? So if someone says like, hey, let's collaborate, right? Yeah, it has a very, very different feeling. So, the Germans had to come up with a new word, right? Because that one was taken. So they came up with a much more neutral term called mitarbeiten. And mitarbeiten, directly translated, means with working, right? Completely void of any value judgment. It's like, hey, we happen to with work, right? You pick up the box, I pick up the box, we're with working, right? There's no judgment if it's good or bad. And to a certain extent, anyone who's had a collaboration go poorly understands that, yeah, sometimes your closest friends can be your enemies in bad collaborations. And all that said, it prepared me very, very, very well for my future career at Microsoft. I mean, it's a large corporation, very much at the frontier of building collaborative products. But I would say the collaborative products are actually more with-working products, right? When you think about SharePoint, when you think about most productivity tools today, they're very much about the efficient allocating of labor, right? Who gets to do what, who's checking in what document gets handed off, right? It isn't really like, it doesn't very much feels like, it's not jazz, right? It's very much highly optimized workflow solutions, right? And so, it made me feel a little bit better, right? That it's not just all, being in the flow and working off each other's ideas. That, there's another culture out there and another the side of the coin of collaboration, which is like the efficient allocation of labor. The short of it, creative collaboration, where you're actually having two people or more people coming together to develop something new, is just fundamentally hard. right? It's very, very difficult. It's easier when you're a great artist, when you have a brand where people get it and they typically show up and you know what you're about. But for mere mortals, right, it's really, really, really hard. And so we started thinking a lot about this, and the answer is, it's not really your fault that creative collaboration is hard, right? The reality is, like, just through growing up and going through school systems, the deck is stacked against you. And I'll explain a couple of reasons why that's the case. So the first thing is, and these are like, you might remember this from school, the first thing is that you'll get taught in school is, don't look at your neighbor's work. That's called cheating, right? It's keep those things separate. Don't look at your neighbor's work. The second thing is that you get taught over and over is think for yourself. Right? Think for yourself, which is good to develop critical thinking skills, but what happens over time is that people tend to go towards the thought modality that works best for them. And they think at some point, well, I guess if I'm good at math, the rest of the world should be good at math. If I'm good with words, the rest of the world should be good at words. So I mean, as you're thinking for yourself, you become just so good and trained in your way of thinking and not other people's ways of thinking. So it really boxes you in. And the last last area is that you get told over and over to stay on task, pass that exam, get the right score, get that right GPA. I mean, there is very variance to even like how people are tested today. That you're to the point where people like think you can actually look up answers at the end of the book. In creative collaborations, guess what? You're writing the book. There are no answers at the very end. So let's revisit this and really look at what should happen. The first is when you have two people working together or more people working together, right? It's about bringing the new and the familiar together, right? So we really need to get to a mode where there's a network where people can work off of each other's idea. The second aspect is when you look at tools in particular and different modes of thinking, right? We need to make it easy for people to bring ideas in, share them, express them, relate to them. And most importantly, when you think about the creative process, it's not a straight line. It looks very much more like this, all right? Something like that. So it starts very amorphous. You're trying to answer a question. You're trying to even develop what the answer is. And then as you work through the creative process, you then start getting into a mode of efficiency and getting things done. So this is pretty much the outline of my talk. We're going to look at what's going on the network side, how do you really find a great collaborative network, what are the tools that you need, and what's happening on the process, and what are the evolutions there. So first, let's talk about what creativity is at its core. It's the marriage of one part familiar with one part new, right? So if you're just by yourself and you're not looking around you constantly, right, you'll get stale, right? But you really have to reach out and see what's around you to that effect. And in this day and age, the great thing is we have like this amazing thing called the internet and networks and connectivity where you can get inspired from all over the world. In fact, in our iPad application paper, we built in a collaboration network right into the core. Right, so here you're seeing actually like people like remixing and sharing pages. I'll give a few examples. Like as I'm even preparing this talk, there's certain drawing skills that I don't have, and I then was leaning on the community. You'll see this illustration later, but it's just like the picture plane illustrated. I needed someone to help me draw a face. Right, so someone came in and actually added in this particular photo. So right here, like Tina and team, they mentioned there is a template right now. So this is actually my remix of the CreativeMornings logo, right? This version, and so you can see a ton of people have gone in and developed their own spin on the CreativeMorning logo. And Mix, our community there, we have well over 1 million folks on there across the entire world. It's a remarkable experiment for us. It was this idea of being able to send a piece of paper all around the world that everyone can touch, everyone can access. And it's like the German in me thought this would be probably like an invitation to open anarchy, right? I mean, it's like, what will happen to a piece of paper when you send it around the world? And the reality is beauty happens. Incredible things happen. One of the first things people did, and it's still one of the most common things that people do on Mix, is that they would start teaching each other things, right? You'll see student notes being shared. You'll see folks like, this is like how to, sunset in 5 steps, right? I mean, how to draw eyes. And what's wonderful is actually people around the world draw eyes very differently, as they do lips, as they do eggs, as they do, I mean, I could be swiping here over 2,800 times. I mean, there are 2,800 different ways of how to do blank in 5 steps. It's an incredible community of people that are working off each other's ideas. We had folks like, Project Red post templates there, which received before the holidays about 4,500 remixes. It's an incredible place, right, where you can actually see what people do when they're brought together in a creative environment, right? They create beauty, they work off each other's idea, and they're fundamentally good. Right? That's what's so incredible to me, like still to this day. Like I always was wondering, like, are people good? And the answer is they are. They are. I mean, this is proof. There are like millions and millions upon creations where people are working together. This is another template that's going on right now. We have some people like remixing, actually live sketching this talk, which we'll revisit at the very end and see what's going on there. So the network, it's very important, and one of the great joys in a career, I would say, is finding a great creative team that will stick with you for the rest of your life. Second area is around tools. And here, this is a terrific illustration. I mean, I appropriated this from Scott McCloud's book, Understanding Comics. Like, he talks about the picture plane and how there are different dimensions on conveying idea. We'll start in the lower right corner. When you take words, they're incredibly good at conveying abstract ideas. You can say things like, we will inspire future generations with audacious ideals, right? It sounds good. You have no idea what I just said, but you can say these things with words, right? So when I say the word face, it's very abstract and encompasses every face there is. As you move up one of the leg towards sketches, you'll cross through the area of diagrams, right? A diagram is actually a mixture between a sketch and a somewhat more abstract expression. The sketch is terrific because it becomes apparent what it is you're talking about, right? A sketch is essentially only what really matters, and you can recognize it. You don't have to read a word, you can look at it, you recognize it, and the sketch only contains what is necessary to convey that idea. And then as you go down the other dimension, you head towards photos, which are actually the exact representation of the thing, right? The perfect face. You take a generic face in the sketch form. What in this particular case matters, it's a smiley face, somewhat more male looking, and then as you go to the photo, this is a particular female face, right? Now, in this area, right, anytime you're in this lower area down here, keep in mind that you're placing a lot of burden in terms of comprehension onto the person you're trying to work with. They have to interpret your words, they have to understand what it is you're talking about, and then they'll come up with some abstract notion of what you're talking about. When you go in the other quadrant, right, when it becomes visual, at that point, it's much more easy for people to be on the receiving end, right? They can see your ideas, they can relate to your ideas. You're not forcing them to make up what you're actually talking about. It's the difference between going through a Twitter stream versus an Instagram feed. Like the Instagram feed, you understand what's going on just by glancing through it. Twitter, you have to like read through. And it's no different from when it comes to conveying of ideas. So as you're thinking through that, every time when you have a chance, right, to make something more visual, go for it, right? Really, really go for it because it allows other people to get in and be on the same page with you. I'd even say words work even better as images, so that's why poetry matters. On the tools front, and there's also no excuse. I do have to now talk about paper for a brief moment because we put a lot of work into this product specifically to make it easier for people to sketch. Like I can't, just so you know, I can't draw triangles. But with the help of our software, which has like, auto-tune for drawing in it, you can very, very quickly draw out like, any type of illustration you want to do. So from Venn diagrams to pyramid charts, you can draw connectors between them. It's really, really terrific for you to very quickly develop your ideas. There's a whole other set of tools in here if you feel if you really want to go more into the area of sketching, you can draw watercolors. You can also draw, with charcoals. Like it's a complete set of tools that works together, plus built in with a creative network around it. Last point, let's talk about the creative process. So we'll start with the things that are easy in the creative process. Right, the very end of the creative process people understand, right? This is when you're the runner, you see the finish line in sight, right? You're in full productivity mode, you're going there, and the world has two responsibilities at this point, either to like really cheer you on or to get out of your way, right? These are the two things you need to do. And you feel very good, you feel powerful because you're getting stuff done. And that's something like you get rewarded on, and we're trained to really always think about like how efficiently can we be and how quickly can we get things done. You have a lot of tools that help you with this, right? You've got things like Word, and you've got Illustrator, and whatever other productivity tools you use. But the one thing is that you don't want to be at that phase is you don't want to be a jerk. And what I mean by that is if someone does show up in your way and says like, hey, George, I have this new idea about such and such, like, don't run over them, right? Be open-minded that people can come up to you and actually, want to interact and want to see what's going on. So just be gentle as you're barreling towards the finish line in your creative process, that you don't run over people in the process. Now, the front of the creative process, when you're trying to figure out, like, what problem are you trying to solve? The very, very front here, right, people are also familiar with, and that's a really fun phase. It's something where you're getting inspiration, and the internet also has that, has made that so easy. I mean, you could spend hours and hours in trying to find inspiration and developing ideas online, and it's all about, and I like how actually actors think about this. It's where you're layering in different inspiration, different ideas, and you're making connections with people as you're forming up your thought. And then comes this moment, like when at some point, you have to just choose which path to pursue, what idea to follow, and that's a very interesting moment in time, right? Because it's a very happy moment because you actually get to pick a particular direction, but it's also a very sad moment because you're about to kill hundreds of other directions. One of the hardest things in the creative process is actually saying no, and you have to say no in order to make progress. So I think at that point, what's very important is that you're kind, right? That you're just really, really kind to the people that you're working with, kind to yourself, and that you just allow yourself to pick one direction and go for it. Like at some point, you can't perpetually be in this mode of ever-ending opportunities and possibilities. You have to choose and make that decision. I think that center point, when like inspiration becomes real, I think that's the one that's the least understood. But throughout all of this process, like I think a kindness towards others and a kindness towards your ideas really is critical. And I hope that over the next couple of years, and that's something that we're in it really together, we'll figure out not just how to create by ourselves, but also create as a species as a whole. Right, so that's a huge area of innovation for us, and an ability to really think through how do we create better together. So in short, like when you look at collaboration, what we've learned about it, a very, very healthy collaboration requires you, one, to have a terrific network, right? And there are digital tools that are there that help. It requires you to express ideas in different thought modalities, not the ones that you feel necessarily comfortable with. If you're a writer, challenge yourself with images. If you're good with images, challenge yourself with video. If you're good with video, challenge yourself with music. Really work through different thought modalities. It broadens the ability of people that you can work with and easily work off these others' ideas. And then around the creative process, like be kind throughout that. Like be kind towards yourself, be kind towards others. It's one of those parts because it helps you with that fundamental attitude of kindness to actually identify then a great team and a great set of other tools and people that you can then work with. And to really bring that all together, like we have to go back to a different realm. We have to go to the realm of poetry. And I have to share this poem because I love it so much. It's a Tuft of Flowers by Robert Frost. It's a pastoral poem, and this is what I actually wrote out, and I then posted to Mix. But I got an even better version back, which is the visual version of this poem. And the story is essentially of a man going to turn the grass after it's been cut. So someone went in and cut my poem, which I think is so lovely. But, well, here it goes. I went to turn the grass once after one who mowed it in the dew before the sun. The dew was gone that made his blade so keen. Before I came to see the leveled scene, I looked for him behind an aisle of trees. I listened for his whetstone on the breeze. But he had gone his way, the grass all mown, and I must be, as he had been, alone. As all must be, I said within my heart, whether they work together or apart. But as I said it, swift there passed me by on noiseless wing a bewildered butterfly, seeking with memories dimmed overnight some resting flower of yesterday's delight. And once I marked his flight go round and round as where some flower lay withering on the ground, and then he flew as far as I can see, and then on tremulous wing came back to me. I thought of questions that have no reply, and would have turned to toss the grass to dry. But he turned first and led my eye to look at a tall tuft of flowers beside a brook, a leaping tongue of bloom the scythe had spared beside a reedy brook the scythe had bared. I left my place to know them by their name, finding them butterfly weed when I came. The mower in the dew had loved them thus, by leaving them to flourish, not for us, nor yet to draw one thought to him, but from sheer gladness at the brim. The butterfly and I lit upon, nevertheless, a message from the dawn that made me hear the wakening birds around, and hear his long scythe whispering to the ground, and feel a spirit kindred to my own, so that henceforth I worked no more alone, but glad with him. I worked as with his aid, and weary sought at noon with him the shade, and dreaming, as it were, held brotherly speech with one whose thought I had not hoped to reach. Men work together. I told him from the heart, whether they work together or apart. It's one of these beautiful moments when you realize that in the creative process, like, we are really in this together. So thank you for lending my attention this morning, and go forth today, be creative, be fearlessly collaborative, and remember, we're all in this together. Thank you.